Avatars Tweets Cover-Ups. How the Pro-Qatar campaign, conceived by Netanyahu's aides, worked a network of avatars on X and a mysterious website linked to a firm called Koios pushed out pro-Qatar content, in line with the campaign outlined in documents penned by Netanyahu's aides. Perception: We never worked for Qatari government. By Peleg and Omer Benjakob, March 23, 2025. An online and social media analysis based on documents obtained by Haaretz reveals the inner workings of a pro-Qatar campaign organized by key aides to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and demonstrates the narratives their firm crafted to help shift the discourse around the emirate. The documents led to a pro-Qatar campaign that made use of fake social media profiles, so-called avatars, and even websites set up specifically for the purpose of online influence. The campaign documents led Haaretz and social media researchers to roughly 20 avatars, one dedicated news site, and at least one blog that were deployed to counter negative discourse about Qatar, the main financial backer of the terrorist organization Hamas. The documents link Netanyahu's aides, as well as others, to the online campaign, intended to help mitigate criticism at Qatar's poor human rights record and its role as a destabilizing force in the world. Haaretz revealed a few months ago that Netanyahu's advisors, Yonatan Ourich and Srulik Einhorn, built a campaign to whitewash Qatar's image through their company, Perception, which advises politicians around the world. Perception joined forces with another Israeli company, Koios. While the former drafted the messages and formulated strategy, the latter mainly executed the plans, operating a network of avatars to push out the messages. Koios, established by Ella Tkach Drazen, Ori Segev, and Brigadier General Rezendaz Eli Ben Meir, a former head of the Research and Analysis Division in the IDF's Intelligence Corps, describes itself on its website as a fraud prevention firm focused on online financial investigations. Ourich, Perception, and Koios denied these claims. At the time of the pro-Qatar campaign, Netanyahu was in the midst of his own campaign in Israel to regain the premiership. Ourich, who still serves as a consultant to Netanyahu, was then the Likud party spokesperson, while Einhorn was in charge of the party's national campaign. Qatar, which had long suffered from a negative image due to its support for terrorist groups, was providing financial support to Gaza in coordination with Israel, a policy initiated by Netanyahu as prime minister. Covering their tracks. The revelations, then and now, are based on documents from 2022. The documents, which were linked directly to Ourich and Einhorn's emails, were deleted in recent weeks, even though they had been online and accessible since 2022. The documents also tracked the changes made to them over time, and their edit history shows how the campaign, dubbed Project Lighthouse, was formulated. Interestingly, the original version of one of the Qatar campaign documents also contained details about another campaign to improve the image of Aleksandar Vučić, the embattled president of Serbia, to whom Einhorn is also a campaign consultant. One of the documents included a link to a video on Einhorn's personal YouTube account. That video, too, was taken offline shortly after Haaretz reached out for comment in November. For the past few months, with the help of researchers from Active Info, a social media research firm, Haaretz has investigated these documents and others, speaking with sources familiar with the campaign to map out its operations. This investigation identified almost 20 different accounts active on X, formerly Twitter, as well as a news site and blog whose links were shared on social media by these avatars. The avatars' online activities and the content of the purported outlets they shared match almost perfectly with those suggested by the campaign documents. The investigation reveals not just the tactics used by these firms to try to swing online sentiment, but also how they cover their tracks. An analysis of the campaign's activity found that though active for years, most of their past activity related to Qatar has since been deleted. Active Info researchers say this is a pattern. Among the avatars found through the documents was an account under the name Ella Gregory, which is still live and active. Just this January, Ella Gregory responded to a post by the Qatari Foreign Ministry, praising its role in supplying aid to Gaza in response to criticism of Qatar's use of money to buy influence across the world. Another avatar found to be linked to the campaign, Denise Webster, praised Qatar's role in hostage negotiations as recently as last month. All 3 tweets have since been deleted, but were documented by ActiveInfo researchers. ActiveInfo found numerous instances where tweets were deleted and other such steps were taken. For example, the Ella Gregory account recently changed its handle, making tracking its past activity harder, another known tactic according to the researchers. Sources familiar with the campaign confirmed that this is in line with Koios's practice of deleting past tweets. Now offline. Stories about Qatar. The accounts identified as part of the pro-Qatar campaign also shared links from 2 distinct websites, Worldwide and Business News and a blog. The former was seemingly set up to serve content for online campaigns and designed to appear like a real news site. The website was registered in the Philippines in 2020, but the email used for registration is linked to an Israeli individual called Aidan Shantz. According to legal documents seen by Haaretz, Shantz served in Israel's military intelligence. Sources say he was involved with Project Lighthouse. Shantz appeared on the Koios website as the firm's vice president for financial intelligence until last Thursday evening, March 20th. However, hours after he was contacted for this report, his name was removed, only to be returned later this weekend. In March 2022, Shantz posted on Facebook a recruitment ad for German-speaking workers for a particularly interesting job, while another employee posted a similar ad in an IDF intelligence veterans group. According to campaign documents held by Haaretz, one of the target audiences for the operation was German football fans. The website registered with his email. Worldwide and Business News published over 30 reports in favor of Qatar since its launch, most from 2022, the year of the World Cup in Qatar. These 2 were taken offline last week after Koios and its workers were contacted. Their archived versions, which are still online, match with the proposed campaign's narratives and talking points. One report published by the website, shared by the campaign avatars, addressed COVID-19 concerns that also plagued the 2022 Games, the first large public sports event since the pandemic. Qatar has been able to keep the COVID-19 death toll to a minimum, thanks in large part to its government, which has made no exceptions with their treatment of COVID-19, the report said, adding errors in the original text, so the Qatari authorities are doing everything in its power to ensure the public's safety. The link was shared as part of an attempt to address health concerns at the Games, just as suggested by Perception. An account called Ashley Nakanechi, identified in the campaign documents, posted the story on their X account, as did a small handful of other accounts, including Claire Greenwood and Kenneth Byers, who were found to frequently post about Qatar on X. Another report from Worldwide and Business News focused on kosher food that would be provided at the Games. This, too, was shared by avatars. This idea is explicitly noted in the campaign documents as a strategy to appeal to Jewish soccer fans concerned about visiting Doha. Even after the World Cup ended, the website continued posting pro-Qatari reports echoing key messages outlined in the campaign documents. In October 2023, after war had broken out between Israel and Hamas, a report about Qatar being a neutral mediator was published. A month later, a report about Qatar brokering a ceasefire between the 2 sides also appeared. In one of the campaign documents, dated August 2022, Oriך wrote, "The war between Israel and Gaza is creating negative discourse within the Jewish community. We recommend emphasizing Qatar's role as a mediator, promoting a ceasefire and restoring peace." Oriך also suggested that Qatar issue condemnations of terror attacks, including those in Israel, to help address the issue. That's a lie. ActiveInfo's analysis was conducted using a monitoring tool called Scooper. The accounts identified as part of the campaign share numerous traits. Several were followed by the same network of accounts, including avatars listed in the internal documents. 4 of them were created on the same day, July 9, 2021. One of those was named Yehoshua Rothschild. A number of these accounts also shared articles about Qatar published on a blog, using the same name and profile image as the Rothschild account on X. After the World Cup, the blog began publishing numerous articles praising Qatar, upon the country's winning bid to host the next Basketball World Cup. One article called Qatar, a land of opportunity for basketball fans and the safest country in the world. Other campaign-linked accounts amplified positive content about Qatar in the context of the 2027 tournament using specific hashtags. Over 11 more posts, many using AI-generated images, the blog lauded Qatar's diplomatic skills, its role in mediating the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, and its commitment to regional peace. This was part of a larger theme amplified by the accounts. The same avatars also posted about Qatar's mediation efforts between the West and Afghanistan in 2022 and again in 2023 for its role in facilitating a hostage exchange between Russia and Ukraine, presenting Qatar as a positive global force. The campaign also included paid promotion of real news stories presenting Qatar in a positive light, using services like Taboola and Outbrain. For example, a US State Department announcement in which Secretary of State Antony Blinken praised Qatar's positive involvement in the Middle East was promoted this way. X accounts connected to the campaign also made posts addressing concerns about workers' deaths, saying Qatar was improving labor conditions. So many lies have been told, like never before. Qatar 2022 wasn't built on 6,500 deaths. That's a lie. One linked account called Claire Greenwood wrote, claims that Qatar had improved conditions for foreign construction workers who built the World Cup stadiums was a key issue raised in the internal campaign documents reviewed by Haaretz. The documents even suggested that Qatar establish a compensation fund for injured or deceased laborers. Another online asset used in the campaign, according to two sources and documents reviewed by Haaretz, was a seemingly satirical X account called The Imaginary Times, which posted fictional but favorable news stories about Qatar. The account displayed suspicious behavior, such as extreme fluctuations in follower counts, from 0 to thousands in a short time. Its goal was to help shift the discourse around Qatar from negative to positive, one of the campaign's key promises. The account was launched in November 2021 and began posting about Qatar in March 2022. Among other things, it published satirical posts about Israel-Qatar relations, including a report that the Emir of Qatar had bought the Beitar Jerusalem soccer club. Since war broke out in Gaza, the account also commented on Israeli public diplomacy efforts. Like the blog, this account remained active until February 2024, when it posted about Qatar organizing a peace summit between Netanyahu and Hamas on the beaches of Gaza. The other Qatargate influence campaigns are designed to create the illusion of widespread public support by echoing coordinated messages and flooding discourse with desired content. However, according to Active Info researchers, the accounts involved did not receive wide exposure or generate significant engagement from real users, suggesting that the campaign's overall impact was ultimately limited. The joint effort by Perception and Koios took place on the backdrop of a much broader Qatari attempt to influence public opinion in the West, reshape global perceptions ahead of the World Cup, and transform its image from that of a conservative, religious monarchy and a sponsor of terrorism into a progressive and constructive regional actor. These efforts eventually became one of Europe's biggest scandals, Qatargate, which exposed how this influence was also exerted through lobbying, funding think tanks and PR initiatives in sports, as well as outright bribery of European parliamentarians. Last week, Israeli police detained Yonatan Oreich and Eli Feldstein, Netanyahu's spokesperson, who is currently accused of leaking classified information, for questioning. A search was also conducted at one of their homes. Both are under investigation for alleged contact with a foreign agent, fraud, money laundering, and bribery. A gag order has been imposed on the details of the investigation. The interrogation followed a report on Can 11, where an Israeli businessman was recorded admitting to transferring money from a Qatari government lobbyist to Feldstein. According to Channel 12 News, Feldstein provided PR services to a foreign company working for Qatar on the hostage issue while serving in Prime Minister Netanyahu's office. Perception said in response to this report, "No matter how many times you report this, Perception has never worked with the Qatari government. Not in 2022, and not after. This lie too will collapse eventually." On behalf of Oreich, attorneys Amit Haddad and Noah Milstein said, "It never happened." This is yet another criminal attempt to fuel with poison a fictitious investigation with lies under a court-issued gag order. Koios declined to comment. In response to a Haaretz inquiry in November, co-founder Takac Driesen said on behalf of the company, "This is not our field of activity. There has never been any engagement between the companies. Koios is not involved in this matter."